Welcome to Discipleship Dialogues with Ascending Leaders. Ready for transformation in your church? We're here to help you get measurable results and eternal outcomes. Join us as we uncover the vital, often missed concepts that will help you build a vibrant, Christ-centered discipleship culture. Welcome to the dialogue today. I am Reverend Dr. Mike Johnson, founder of Ascending Leaders. And today we're digging into the idea that discipleship happens really well in circles rather than in rows. And with me is Reverend Harry Veen. Harry has many years of experience as a pastor in United Methodist churches. Harry, what are some of the sizes of the churches that you've served?
If you look at worship attendance, probably the smallest I served was a little more than 100.
Okay.
Upwards to 900 to 1,000.
Wow. And that's probably what makes you such a good coach in small churches, 100 or so people, less or more, and medium-sized churches and large churches, as you have experience in, because each one is you need to pastor it a bit differently.
Absolutely.
And you've got so much coaching skill and training. You're trained and certified by the International Coaching Federation, and we are just overjoyed that you're a discipleship coach with Ascending Leaders, available to serve churches in coaching them to do discipleship better. And thank you for coming today.
Sure.
We're talking today about discipleship circles, discipleship in circles. And you and I actually talked about this before, but just remind us, here at Ascending Leaders, what do we mean when we say discipleship?
Within Ascending Leaders, we look at discipleship as the process of becoming a deeper lover of God and others. And we try to help other churches embody some of that, even though their definitions of discipleship are going to be a little different. But I think that becomes such a part of who we are that we try to share that with others.
So this Discipleship Dialogues title is Discipleship in Circles rather than in rows. And it seems to imply that there's some ways of doing discipleship that are more impactful or more helpful than others. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thinking about discipleship in circles versus rows or pews or however you look at it, I think the effectiveness happens because in those smaller settings, which are the circles, lives are changing. So you see transformation taking place. People become better connected with one another. And you find that there's a passion that begins to take place. So go back to what I just shared about our understanding of discipleship, a deeper lover of God and others. So if you become passionate about that, you're going to be able to help others increase in their love for the things that Jesus loves and the people that Jesus loves.
So what does doing discipleship when people are in circles provide that you don't get when people are sitting in rows?
As one who preached for over 40 years to people in rows, I would say it begins by getting more personal. It's hard to get personal when you have people out there. Again, whether it was 100 or whether it's closer to 1,000, it's hard to get personal. Now, you can, and you hope in your preaching and teaching at times you can do that. But man, when people are sitting in a circle, again, it's not going to be a huge circle. And if we're thinking about discipleship, let's just throw out the number 12, right? 12 people are sitting in a circle. There's a lot of things that begin to happen within that circle. So you get more personal and you become connected. So whether you think of discipleship in that way as connectional discipleship or relational discipleship, it begins to happen.
That number 12, obviously a biblical number, is very important. So, so flesh that out more for us. What does that entail?
I believe it entails openness. Many times, if you're sitting in that circle, people are going to want you to open up. And what I've found over the years is People will even begin to try to help others open up. So openness, I believe accountability happens because, again, with a limited number of people in that circle, you can truly begin to hold one another accountable in regard to what's being said or what's being shared. People become more engaged because it's not a speaker up there that you're trying to engage many. There's an engagement that's more intimate that's happening. And then there's also, again, that connectedness where people aren't necessarily just flying off here or there. They're truly together.
So tell us how you've personally experienced the power of discipleship in circles.
Part of it for me, Mike, goes back to my life verse. I was serving a church in Brenham, Texas, and I found doing funerals for people, there were a good number of people that had come from a Lutheran background. And when I was doing their funerals, their family would come and say, here's their Bible verse. And after doing just 3 or 4 of those, I said, how did people get a Bible verse? They said, well, when they were confirmed in the Lutheran church, they received a verse. I thought, I never got a verse. Well, I wasn't confirmed in the Lutheran church, but I wanted a verse. So I went through about a 6 to 9 month journey with Christ going, I need a verse. I really want a verse. And so that verse over that process was given to me. It's Philippians 3:10. I want to know Christ, the power of his resurrection, and to share in the fellowship of his suffering. And so the very beginning of that life verse, I want to know Christ. I have found, Mike, that if I truly want to know Christ, I can do certain things myself. I can have spiritual practices that I can practice, dig into. But in order for me to truly come to know Christ, it has taken me being in relationship with others. And that doesn't happen with a large group. It has happened with more of an intimate group where we can talk, we can share, we can dialogue. And I've come to know Christ much more, thankfully, through others.
Yeah, mine is Colossians 3, verse 12. But you've had a lot of experiences I have, and just as you've been in ministry, what are some powerful experiences you've seen of discipleship in circles, and what made them so powerful?
Well, one's in this building. You know, we're doing this at Chapelwood United Methodist Church, where I grew up, where I first served in ministry. And as I shared with you earlier, our youth program met just downstairs below where we're doing this. When I was in youth ministry here, we had over 150 kids in youth ministry regularly. And so in order to handle those youth, we did ICU units, intensive care units. We would divide the youth up into like groups of 10 or 12, and we would have a couple of counselors with each group. And we would take time each week to divide up into those groups. And those kids found in those small groups, they could share more. They could talk about what's going on at home, struggles of faith, what's going on at school, what maybe some personal life decisions they were struggling with. A lot of powerful things happen within those groups. I would say the other example from ministry was from churches I served that had recovery groups. I know this church has a great recovery ministry that is just making a huge impact in people's lives. I've served churches where there have been AA groups, NA groups, and as I have met with some of those and gotten to experience what they're doing at our church, I have found that they embody what church should be more like. And in fact, many times I've told the church, we need to be more like these groups because they do share. They do get real. They don't come in with masks on and just try to hide and just sit back. They truly get involved and truly get engaged.
Wow. And I'm glad you raised that because just a few months ago, there was a Pew Charitable Trust survey and report that came out saying that each generation in the United States has kind of believed in God less. They've indicated, they've shown that. But this next generation, Gen Z, ages 13 to 28, have actually stopped going down. They've actually been just as believing in God as the millennials.
Wow.
And I have a friend who's a long time in a recovery group, and he said all of a sudden there's just an influx of men and women under 30, so much so that they used to never have problems having, they have sponsors, getting a sponsor for new people. They can't find enough sponsors for all of these Gen Zs that are coming into these recovery groups for help. So that's tremendous.
I think Mercy Street Ministry, which is the one that is here at Chapelwood that deals with a lot of recovery, I think they would probably echo that 10 times over.
Okay. And how does ascending leaders, how do we help churches build discipleship in circles?
I go back to when we've had the opportunity to go physically into a church and meet with, whether it's their leadership or whether it's their discipleship leadership, that has always started around a table. Or we may have 4 or 5 or 6 tables in the room where people sit around those tables and they begin to do what we're talking about.
So here at Ascending Leaders, we talk about defining and measuring what's going on in the life of the church. What discipleship is happening beyond attendance and tithing. What metrics or qualities do you believe are really important to be measuring the discipleship that's happening in these circles?
Let me begin by saying what's not.
Good.
Because so many times within a church, we think we measure it by numbers, by finances, which is also numbers, but in a different way. The numbers I'm speaking of is the number of people we have in worship, the number of people that, attend small groups or in Sunday school. And then there's the number of the finances, what our offering is, how we're doing on budget. That's not something we really talk about within Ascending Leaders, and that's part of what I love about us. When we do discipleship assessments with churches and they answer those questions, they begin to get back information that isn't necessarily number-centric. So what are those metrics and qualities that we bring in? We help churches discover how they're doing in helping people develop a relationship with Jesus Christ. We find that churches are being effective in doing next steps within their journeys. We help churches find that at those various stages, maybe they have a lot of people in those early stages, and they're finding that they haven't allowed enough pathways for people to go deeper. And so, as you know, we can help people really do that. Another metric and quality we end up finding is people answer questions about their spiritual practices. Well, some leadership are surprised that people aren't really digging into the Word, or people are struggling with having a relationship with others where they're comfortable talking about their faith. And then there's those questions about just the core beliefs. And that's a wonderful place where we can help people strengthen their faith and really think about what their core beliefs are, what that foundation is. So I think those are much more important than the ones that we in the church continue to throw out.
Great. I'm glad you brought up church-wide discipleship assessments, because Ascending Leaders has just created a new one, a great starter one for a church called Disciple Scan. And it's just where some leaders get together for 90 minutes and basically assess where they're at with discipleship in circles.
Yeah.
So that's terrific.
Absolutely.
Now, you and I are both experienced pastors. We both went to seminary. You went to seminary at a different time than I did, but still we were trained with a certain model of ministry. Mm-hmm. So how does this doing ministry around discipleship in circles, how does that challenge some of our current views of ministry?
Well, I think in a couple of ways, Mike. I mean, back in those days, going through seminary and the way we were seeing church, the pastor was kind of up front and central to the whole process. And yes, you need that pastoral leadership. Like I've even said with the discipleship plans, you've got to have it where it's pastor driven, where the pastor is for it, invested in it, speaking and preaching into it. But man, when you're talking about discipleship in churches, in circles, it moves away from like a leader or a couple of leaders, and it's more empowering people to disciple one another. That becomes powerful because I think we all know that when you have more disciples discipling others, that continues to grow, and you see that begin to happen. I think one of the other challenges is we come into churches sometimes, and churches are afraid to change because we've always done it this way. That becomes challenging for a pastor. It becomes challenging for a staff. And so if we can get away from that mentality and say, well, have you ever considered trying it this way? Mm-hmm. Have you ever considered doing something different? Man, that can change a lot of people. And maybe those are changes we really need to see happen.
Yeah. Ascending Leaders the last 4 years has actually done some work internationally. And what we're finding is that churches are just jumping on this, just loving this, going from discipleship in rows to in circles, where even in some locales where high school age girls leading circles, discipleship groups that involved uncles and aunts and cousins and family members, that next generation leading it. It's just exciting to see what God is doing, not only here in the U.S., but around the world about this discipleship in circles.
Yeah, when I've heard our international coaches sharing with us online what's happening, I'm going, man, if we within churches here in the U.S. could get that comfortable making those changes and doing something different, it'd be more than revival.
Yes, it would be. And we're all praying for that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for just exploring that with us, how important that is for pastors and for our audience. Just discipleship in circles is a very effective way to do discipleship, much more so than discipleship in rows. But rows is still important, but these circles are really impactful. Thank you, Harry.
Thanks for the
being with us.
opportunity. Sure.
And thank you for everyone who's joined us for this discipleship dialogue. Let's not just talk about it, but let's do it and see real transformation happen. Go to ascendingleaders.org to read and see more about how Ascending Leaders can help you through our discipleship coaches or through some free and paid resources there. Or go to YouTube or Vimeo and follow us there for more discipleship dialogues. Don't wait for someday. Let's start today and make some changes in your church that can lead to a world difference. It's important for your ministry. Have a great day.